He didn't believe I was the professor until he saw his name on the expulsion list. What happens when a black professor walks into his own classroom and is mistaken for the janitor? The way he turns the entire university system on its head leaves everyone, from students to the dean, completely speechless. If Malik Madison got $1 every time someone looked at him like he'd wandered into the wrong building, or worse, like he'd stolen the right to be there, he'd own the entire university by now. The whole campus, dean's office, cafeteria, and a memorial plaque at the entrance with his face chiseled in stone, and the caption, "He told y'all." But instead of cutting ribbons or sipping coffee in a leather chair under portraits of old white founders, he stood outside Lecture Hall 103A at Bakersfield University, gripping a worn leather folder that held the lecture he'd spent his entire weekend perfecting. Because Malik would rather show up black and over-prepared than black and under suspicion, he knew the drill. The price of entry was never just credentials, it was performance, precision, perfection. 8:02 a.m. Tuesday, first day of a new semester. That peculiar smell of fresh printed syllabi and privilege in the air. Inside, half the lecture hall was already filled with future lawyers, lobbyists, hedge fund managers, and congressional interns, most of them as pale as copy paper and just as self-satisfied. One student, lounging in a Sigma Tau Chi hoodie like it was his living room, looked up with the slack confidence of a man who'd never been told no. Not by his parents, not by his schools, and certainly not by reality. "Yo, man," the boy said, lazily chewing gum. "This room's reserved. Professor's coming soon." Malik nodded once, calm as a Sunday sermon. "You're right," he said smoothly, walking toward the podium and unbuttoning his tweed blazer. "And here I am." There was a beat, silence so thick you could spread it on toast. "Good morning," Malik continued. "I'm Professor Madison. Welcome to Politics and Power in 21st Century America." You could almost hear their collective brain glitch. One student, the kind who looked like his whole personality was built around TikTok and his dad's campaign contributions, let out a short, awkward laugh. "Yeah, okay. Where's the hidden camera?" Malik didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to the whiteboard and wrote, with the smooth control of someone who'd done this in Ivy League lecture halls, "Dr. Malik Madison, Ph.D., Columbia University." "Columbia, huh?" Hoodie Boy scoffed. "Like, the online version?" That was when Malik turned fully around and locked eyes with Jared Keller, the son of a senator, full-time charmer, part-time academic, and frontrunner for most punchable face on campus. "No, Jared," Malik replied, his voice dry and razor-sharp. "The real campus. Brick buildings. Real exams. But don't worry, that word won't be on the quiz." A few students chuckled. Someone even snorted. Most just stared, caught between confusion and discomfort, as if trying to process the sight of a black man in tweed teaching something other than sports or music theory. But Malik, he rolled right on. "Let's get started. Open your laptops. Today we're diving into how institutions construct and control narratives, including who gets to speak and who's expected to shut up." Oh, the irony. It arrived early and stayed the entire lecture. You'd think that'd be the end of the moment. A hiccup on the first day. But at Bakersfield University, where image management mattered more than academic rigor, this wasn't an awkward introduction. It was a spark, and the brush was dry. 20 minutes after lecture ended, Malik was called to the department head's office. His temporary office, a glorified supply closet with a single wobbly chair and fluorescent lighting that buzzed like it hated him, hadn't even warmed up yet. The head of the department, Dr. Branson, had the look of a man who wanted to appear calm, but was always one bad headline away from cardiac arrest. White, bald, and smelling faintly of menthol and denial, he gestured for Malik to sit. "Professor Madison," Branson began with the kind of strained politeness that usually precedes corporate nonsense. "A few comments came in this morning regarding your, approach to teaching." "My approach?" Malik raised an eyebrow, pulling a water bottle from his satchel. I introduced myself and began the lecture. No juggling, no interpretive dance, and I saved the spoken word piece for week 3. Branson didn't laugh. He rubbed his temples. "One student said they felt, well, politically targeted. Apparently you discussed racial control over narrative in the U.S.? Malik leaned back, folded his arms. Calm, collected, not backing down an inch. "That's the section on power dynamics. We're studying Foucault, not frat house flags. If someone wants politically sterile history, they're in the wrong class." Branson fidgeted, eyes darting, voice dipping into administrative appeasement. "I understand," he mumbled. "Just be cautious. The campus is politically sensitive right now." Malik nodded slowly. "But inside?" He laughed. Oh, they were sensitive, all right. Selectively so. Funny how sensitivity showed up only when someone black told the truth in a tone that wasn't apologetic. The following week, the passive aggression began to bloom like weeds in spring. Jared started coming to class with a baseball cap pulled low and a pout that would have made a toddler proud. He asked intentionally stupid questions, not for clarity, but for spectacle. His little entourage whispered loudly about Malik's bias and joked during discussions. One of them, a Walking Vineyard Vines ad, wrote on the course feedback site, "The professor is obsessed with black pain. He should focus on American politics, not identity stuff." As if those were two separate things. As if he could possibly talk about American power structures without talking about who's been crushed underneath them. Malik kept it cool on the outside, but one afternoon, walking past the vending machines, he heard Jared say to a group of students, "He's not gonna last. Acts like this is Harvard in Harlem or something. This is Bakersfield. He'll be gone by midterms." Malik didn't react, but he felt it, the tension, the pressure in the air, thick and creeping. He knew the playbook, the whisper campaign, the false narrative, the setup. Then came the hit, Thursday night, 7:34 p.m. An email notification popped up on his laptop. Subject line, Academic Standards Inquiry. No greeting, no small talk, just the chilling efficiency of institutional discipline. "We have initiated a preliminary review based on student concerns. You are temporarily suspended from teaching duties pending investigation. Please refrain from campus activity until further notice." That was it. No phone call, no explanation, no chance to speak. Just a digital erasure, swift, sterile, and unmistakably intentional. Malik stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like it was mocking him. He didn't even feel angry yet, not fully. What he felt, more than anything, was familiarity. 5 years ago, at another college, he'd spoken up about racial bias in grading systems. Then came the concerns, the investigation, and the sudden restructuring of his role. That time he'd walked, quietly up, but this time, not a chance. Because this time, Malik had a folder. Inside, documented cases of academic misconduct, including several involving Jared. Screenshots of group chats where students openly discussed getting rid of the new guy, and a video, a grainy, shaky clip, secretly recorded by a student named Cassandra, one of the few who paid attention in class and didn't flinch when hard truths landed. In the video, Jared said with a grin, "All I'm saying is, dude wants to play woke professor. Let's show him what happens when he overplays his hand. Complain enough and he's out. Easy." Malik closed the folder and leaned back. Let them come. He wasn't going anywhere. Malik Madison woke up on Friday morning at exactly 6:12 a.m. to the sound of the garbage truck clanking outside and a fresh wave of righteous anger brewing in his chest. The truck was routine. The anger? That was just part of the package now. Like creamer in bitter coffee or background noise in the life of a black academic who dared to teach truth in an institution built to ignore it. Because let's be clear, Malik wasn't suspended because he lacked qualifications. He wasn't sidelined because he'd been inappropriate, irresponsible, or ineffective. No, he was removed from his class, silenced for the simple sin of being black, brilliant, and too damn inconvenient. He poured himself a mug of coffee so dark it could have passed for an act of protest. No cream, no sugar, just like his mood. He sat at the table, that same leather folder within reach, the one holding a neatly stacked dossier of everything rotten beneath Bakersfield University's polished brochure surface. Every reread didn't just make him angrier, it sharpened his focus. This wasn't just petty politics. It was erasure in slow motion, a system trying to scrub away a man who didn't fit the mold, not because he failed, but because he dared to excel where he was expected to apologize. At noon, Cassandra, his top student and quiet powerhouse of support, sent a message. I downloaded the full chat log. Jared wrote, "We need to get rid of this black demagogue. Let him go rap somewhere in Newark." Is this real life? Oh, it was real. Real like history repeating itself in slow, sarcastic stereo. Malik stared at the message and felt that old, familiar tightness in his chest. The kind you get when you're constantly forced to prove that your existence is not a disruption. He replied with 3 simple words, "Save it all." Then he got to work. He logged into the university's faculty system, the same labyrinth where administrative skeletons were filed away, with polite language and low-resolution JPEGs. And he started digging. He was looking for numbers, receipts, patterns that couldn't be brushed off with a smug press statement. And oh, he found them. Turns out Jared Keller had been reported for academic dishonesty twice before. 2 other professors flagged his work. One of them even noted a suspicious similarity between Jared's paper and a 2011 master's thesis from a different university. And what did the administration do? Nothing. Not a whisper. They called it coincidence. They said the student tried hard. They said, let's not make assumptions. And Malik understood, once again, the ugly truth. When you're part of the club, the system doesn't just protect you, it bends to your comfort. But Malik, he wasn't bending. He printed screenshots. He compiled timelines. He organized everything by date, violation, and institutional inaction. This wasn't just a folder anymore. It was an indictment. Then late that night, the ground started to shift. An anonymous tip, likely from someone inside academic integrity, triggered a campus-wide plagiarism investigation. Quiet, internal. But once the leak hit, the story spread like fire through a dry forest. Guess whose names popped up? Jared Keller, 3 of his frat brothers, a dozen more students, all connected, all involved in what Malik could only describe as manufactured excellence, term papers, ghost-written, AI-generated assignments reviewed by private editors, read their parents, and systemic winks from departments too afraid to challenge money or influence. Officially, the school said nothing, but on campus, the air was thick with whispers. The next morning, Cassandra messaged again. You saw this, right? They're throwing a dropout party at the frat house. They made a fake flyer with your face on a trash can. Well, if that wasn't confirmation they were pressed, what was? It was almost comical, the way these trust fund warriors clung to their imagined superiority. Like Wall Street interns in sweatpants, they didn't just believe they deserved power. They assumed the world owed them protection, and any voice that didn't echo their privilege, to them, it wasn't just a disagreement, it was an attack. But while they were preparing their little tantrum in party form, Malik was preparing a statement of his own. He opened one last tab on his laptop, filled out a formal grievance, not against a student, not against a class, but against Dean Thompson. The claim, failure to address academic violations, negligence in oversight, and complicity in creating a hostile environment for faculty of color. On Monday, Malik walked back into campus, not to teach, not to sneak around, to confront. He wore a full suit, pressed, gray, sharp as the truth he was about to deliver. He carried the folder, not under his arm this time, but in his hand, like a sword. He stepped into the administrative building like he owned it, and in many ways he did, because he was the first professor in years to fight back. Meeting with the ethics committee, he told the secretary. She blinked, then nodded quickly, reaching for the file with his name. It was already there. Of course it was. The committee room was oval, cold and full of avoidance. 4 people sat around a table, all older, all white, all wearing expressions that said, "Let's get this over with." "Professor Madison," the chair began, "we've been made aware of your extracurricular activity. We remind you that your suspension remains." Malik held up a hand. "No need. Let's begin." He opened the folder like a showman revealing the trick, except there was no illusion, just evidence. Here's documented proof of plagiarism. Here's the group chat, full transcript with racial slurs and premeditated manipulation. Here's the faculty complaints you ignored since March. And this, he held up a printed email, is a message from a former assistant dean who witnessed the exact same tactics at another university where I was forced out for being, quote, too provocative. He now works at the Department of Education and has offered to testify. The room went still. The air got thick. The truth, undeniable and inescapable, landed like a dropped microphone. Malik didn't shout. He didn't grandstand. He just asked one question. Who's getting fired first? The next day, the university paper dropped a headline that landed like a bomb. Professor or problem? What happens when the system is forced to listen? And with it came the storm. Hashtags started flying. I stand with Madison. Teach the truth. Let him lecture. Cassandra posted a clip from the group chat. Within 12 hours, it had over 270,000 views. Jared tried to respond online. That clip is fake, taken out of context. To which someone quickly replied, context is you being a racist, Jared. Malik saw it. And for the first time in weeks, he let himself smile. Not a smirk, a real one. Then came the real shift. 2 days later, the university released a formal statement. A list of students dismissed for academic misconduct. The list didn't include fluffy language. No shields, no sugarcoating. First name on the list? Jared Keller. Malik was in his office, reinstated, no announcement needed, when he saw Jared outside trying to badge into the admin building. His ID card blinked red. Denied. He yelled. He paced. He pleaded. Security shook their heads. Malik just watched from the window. No words, no gloating, because sometimes silence says, I told you, you just didn't listen. By the third day after the university published the expulsion list, Bakersfield's campus felt less like a place of learning and more like a kicked-over hornet's nest, the kind of place where whispers followed footsteps, glances lingered too long, and every hallway buzzed with the electricity of unrest. It was no longer just an institution. It had become a stage for something much bigger. The students were murmuring. The professors moved like chess pieces, quiet, careful, cautious. And Dean Thompson? He locked himself in his office under the vague excuse of developing a strategy to manage public response, which in plain English meant trying to cover his tracks before the spotlight burned him too. But outside that insulated administration wing, the truth was already pinned up for everyone to see, taped neatly to the student bulletin board near the main entrance. Right between a flyer for a poetry slam and a lost dog notice, hung a fresh notice from the university. The suspension of Professor Malik Madison has been rescinded. Teaching duties resume immediately. Just like that. Dry, cold, surgical, no apology, no accountability. Not even the decency to admit they'd fumbled. No, we misjudged. No, we're sorry for panicking over race and power. Just administration, doing what it always does best, minimizing its mess by acting like it never happened. But Malik Madison, he knew better. He knew that whether they admitted it or not, this was a bruise the university wouldn't forget. And the pain, that was the price of being seen, truly seen, not just as a professor, but as a man who refused to fold. So that very day, without a word to anyone, he walked back into Lecture Hall 103A. No announcement, no fanfare, just presence. Cassandra was already seated front row, her notebook open, pen ready. A few students who used to laugh at Jared's jokes now stared down at their keyboards, pretending they had urgent emails. Nobody dared to speak out of turn. The room felt different, like it had seen something, like it had become something. These walls weren't just walls anymore. They were witnesses. Malik picked up a marker, walked calmly to the whiteboard, and wrote one question in bold, steady print. Who controls the narrative? He turned around, his voice even but sharp. Who wants to share how recent events have changed your understanding of power? Silence. Not the awkward kind, not the defensive kind, but the kind that settles when people know they're in the presence of something real, something earned. Because Malik wasn't just the black man at the front of the room anymore. He was the professor who didn't bend, the one who didn't shrink or flinch or look away. And in academia, especially for a black educator, that kind of presence is more than rare. It's revolutionary. But beyond the four walls of the classroom, the battle continued. The university's public relations office, in a desperate attempt to spin the unfolding narrative, began offering their version of the truth, sanitized, vague, and just dishonest enough to be insulting. The official spokesperson stood in front of reporters and tried to rewrite the timeline with practiced ease. The professor's suspension was part of a routine inquiry, they said. The student expulsions coincided with an internal academic audit. All events were unrelated. Unrelated, Malik sat at home, listening to the broadcast, sipping from a ceramic mug that read, "Power without ethics is just well-dressed violence." He didn't throw the mug. He didn't shout at the screen. He opened his laptop, because he had his own platform now. The very next day, Malik gave an interview to a respected independent education journal. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished. It was raw and necessary. "I wasn't suspended because I made a mistake," he said flatly. "I was suspended because I made them uncomfortable, because I named the system out loud and didn't ask permission first. The truth is, the system isn't afraid of people who get it wrong. It's terrified of people who get it right, especially if they're black." Within 24 hours, the interview exploded online. It hit Reddit. It hit LinkedIn. Twitter threads stacked up. Messages poured in from faculty across the country. Veteran professors, tenured academics, retired administrators. "Thank you for saying what we were too afraid to." And just like that, Dean Thompson knew his carefully curated facade was cracking. He called Malik in for a meeting. No agenda, no assistant. Just the dean, a conference table, and a glass pitcher of lemon water. A clear attempt to soften the edges. Malik stepped in with the same folder under his arm. The one that started all this. His armor. "Professor Madison," Thompson began with the kind of tight smile that usually comes with a PR training manual. "I think we can agree that things got out of hand." Malik didn't flinch. He laid the folder on the table like a verdict. "No," he said coolly. "Things didn't get out of hand. They just finally got seen. You're welcome." Thompson cleared his throat, tried to find his footing. "We'd like to invite you to participate in drafting a new ethics policy, one that reflects more inclusive standards." Malik raised one eyebrow, didn't blink. So let me get this straight, he said slowly. You want me to help design the guidelines for the same system that tried to erase me? The dean paused. We just want the university to move forward. Malik leaned in slightly. The university will move forward when people like you stop protecting underqualified legacies and start respecting those who earn their seat. That's when silence, real, uncomfortable, heavy silence. Then Malik spoke again. I'll help, but on one condition. Thompson raised his eyebrows. I give a lecture, Malik said. Here, on campus, open to students, faculty, the public, on race, power, and the price of truth in academia. And you don't edit a word. The color drained from Thompson's face, but he nodded. Deal. 1 week later, the university's cultural center was packed, standing room only. Students sat cross-legged on the floor. Staff leaned against walls. Cameras were set up in the back, live streaming the event to YouTube. On the poster outside, a voice beyond the system, Professor Malik Madison on power, race, and academic integrity. Malik walked on stage in a black suit, crisp white shirt, no tie, no filters. He opened with a quote from Toni Morrison. Race is not a real thing. It's a social construct, a distraction, a tool to keep you from your work. And then he let it rip. 45 minutes, no breaks, no hedging. He talked about systems designed to protect privilege, about the fear that follows confident Black voices, about how academic freedom is often just a code for defending inherited power. He closed with this. I was called divisive. I was told I was the problem, but I wasn't here to be comfortable. I was here to teach. And if I make this system uncomfortable by telling the truth, then it was never built for the truth in the first place. The crowd rose, standing ovation. Not from everyone, but from enough. And in the front row sat his mother, 68 years old, the same woman who once cleaned the dorm rooms of that very university just to feed her family. Now watching her son redefine the same institution that had once tried to shrink him, her eyes glowing. After the event, a young Black student approached him. Professor Madison, can I ask you something? Of course, he said. Why didn't you leave? When they suspended you, anyone else would have left. Malik smiled, not wide, but deep. Because I didn't come here just to survive, he said. I came here to teach. And if I walk away without showing people how to stand, then I failed my job. She nodded, then pulled out her phone and registered for his course. Bakersfield's campus would never be the same. Maybe the system didn't crumble, but it cracked. And Malik knew from his life experience, it's through the cracks that the light always gets in.